Meanwhile, the South African Broadcasting Corporation marks 3 months now without a board. In an opinion piece penned together by Wits University journalism professor Anton Harber, he says the ANC benefits from the absence of a board at the public broadcaster. He joins us now for more on that. Prof, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us tonight here on In Focus. When we look at the term of the board ends in October, there are delays in forwarding names of who will be shortlisted. Eventually the names are forwarded, but the state security takes all 37, wants to vet all of them instead of the ones that are shortlisted. That process is delayed. A couple of months later, we hear that, okay, finally we have the 12, and now Parliament approves the 12 candidates. They put them to the president. Last week, we heard the president saying, well, there have been delays, and we concede there have been administrative and logistical delays. The process is almost complete, but I'm not going to commit to a timeline. When you hear all that, what picture begins to emerge for you?
Well, the reason I highlighted it when I wrote about it this week is that it's much the same as dealing with the ESCOM issue. Actions speak louder than words. And so while the president keeps saying that he wants to and will fix up state-owned enterprises, actions like this seem to belie that. You know, why leave a critical SOE without any oversight, any board which can take things forward for 3 months and not see it as any kind of matter of urgency or importance? It does raise serious questions about the political will to get simple things done, like appoint a board.
Do you think there are those, or maybe even the president himself, who might be wanting to deliberately delay this process while, I suppose, the political arrangements within his party that has given him a second term have been sorted out? Or as they put it, they're saying they're waiting for the lekgotla and the possible reshuffle and whatever decisions are going to be made from there.
Well, what I wrote was that there's a number of possible explanations for this delay. One is simple bureaucratic incompetence. A number of people at different levels have just taken too long to do their job, started it too late, taken too long to do it, and have delayed the process. The other is that there's a political battle going on behind the scenes. You know, the president has very little to do. Parliament has sent him the 12 names they recommend for the board. His sole job is to choose the chair and the deputy chair. And, you know, this is no surprise. We've known for 5 years that this would be due at this time. So it's not as if he's caught off guard, but it's quite possible that behind the scenes there's a political battle going on over the chair of the SABC, because we know it's a critical position at a critical time, because the SABC is an important SOE in the run-up to the 2024 elections. But a third concern must be that we know that many of these SOEs are having to fight off criminal syndicates who are attempting or have control of them, and who benefit from the lack of oversight of a board and the lack of control when there is no board. So my concern is that there are those who have an interest in there being no board, and in looking for criminal activity, corrupt activity, while there is a lack of oversight.
Do you think the role of the shareholder, Prof, should be revisited, reviewed, and its involvement, particularly in such appointments?
Sorry?
I'm saying, do you think that the role of the shareholder, that being government, should be revisited, reviewed in some way when it comes to the urgency with which it deals with such appointments?
No, there's no question. The minister, the cabinet, and the president need to say, this is urgent. This is an SOE that needs our attention. We can't leave it without a board for months on end. And we must make the simple decision about who is chairing it, and moves things forward. Otherwise, it calls into question the commitment to sort out the deep problems we have in many of the SOEs.
Immediately, what are some of the strategic decisions that you think are currently being impacted by an absence of a board?
Well, one I know of, and that's critical, is that the Minister of Communications has given until January the 27th for comment and input on the date in which there will be a move over to digital. Now, that date and that move is absolutely critical to the future of the SABC, but the only body within the SABC that can interact with the minister on this issue in terms of the shareholder protocol is the board. So that date is looming, and the SABC might not be able to make its input into what is a critical matter for their future.
What does that mean, I suppose, if you have to look at the financial stability and the editorial respectability of that institution?
Look, we know the SABC has been on a long, hard push under the outgoing board to fix itself financially, and we know that they still had a substantial loss in the last financial year, and to fix itself editorially, to get its journalism up to the standard we expect from the national public broadcaster. I don't know how you make progress on this when, that was a difficult enough task that the old board grappled with and made some progress, but there's still quite a lot to be done. And I don't know how you manage it, make progress, sort out these important and difficult and tough issues if you don't even have a board that is talking about it.
So part of the things that the ANC spoke about in December, and maybe even slightly earlier than that during its policy conference, is this question of the battle of the mind. And they are losing, I suppose, from their point of view, their share in that particular battle in as far as the platforms in which they can be able to communicate. Do you think part of what's coming out of the ANC is that they would want to use the public broadcaster as a tool in that battle for the share of the minds of South Africans?
Look, we know that there are many in the ANC who do not have a great deal of respect for the notion of an independent public broadcaster in the SABC. We know there are those who would like the ANC to have more direct control over content, particularly in the run-up to the election. I don't think it's all people in the ANC, but I think there's certainly those who think that. And who previously have been able to undermine the SABC's independence and assert ANC control over it. That's an ongoing battle in the SABC. At its recent conference, the ANC used the language it always uses around the communication issue and communication policy, and that is a battle of ideas, a war of ideas. And there's no question that the SABC, as the source of news for most South Africans, is a critical factor in that war of ideas, that war for ANC hegemony in the field of ideas. And my concern is that the board is there, first and foremost, to protect the independence of the SABC. And how do you protect the independence of the SABC when you're not even in office yet?
Yeah. The idea then that the SABC should stick to its developmental mandate more than anything and not, I suppose, become like other commercial entities, but should be funded a little bit more. And I think that's the question that keeps coming up by the fiscus. What do you feel about that suggestion or that resolution?
Look, I feel that it's very important that we have a public broadcaster in this country, because most people do depend on it for their news, that we have an independent public broadcaster. And I think that it has to be different. It has to have a different role and purpose from the commercial media. Otherwise, it might not exist. For example, it does have to cover news and speak to South Africans and give voice to South Africans who don't find themselves covered and portrayed and served by the commercial media because it's not commercially viable to do so. So there's a very important function there in terms of giving voice to South Africans who don't find voice within the commercial media. And I think we know that the SABC has this difficulty where the main source of its income is commercial, and that undermines its public service role. So I think it's widely accepted that a new funding model is needed in order to lessen the commercialization of the public broadcaster. You know, we all want it to stand on its own feet and pay for itself as best it can. But it shouldn't be driven by the same commercial motives as the private commercial media. It has first and foremost a public role to fulfill, and it needs a funding model that allows it to do that, a new funding model that allows it to do that.
What do you make of the call to progress community media to become commercial as quickly as we possibly can? I mean, is that an idea to say, well, community media should get commercial so as to, I suppose, create space and not be heavily reliant on the fiscus itself?
So yes, the ANC had a strange resolution that emerged from its conference that community media should move as fast as it can to commercialize. Now, we know community media is in difficulty. We know that there are funding issues there as well. But the fact is that community media, again, serves a different purpose from commercial media. And while, again, one wants it to generate its own income and become financially independent, just to make it like the commercial media means that the very important role played by community media, which is serving local communities, particularly communities, once again, who do not find their faces and voices in the commercial media. So just to put it on a route of commercialization, I think, will destroy what's distinctive about the community media and end its service to those local communities. So I was a bit startled by that resolution, but we are waiting to hear more to understand precisely what they meant, because it was quite cryptic.
Should we wait with bated breath for any semblance of urgency towards the appointment of a new board?
We should. We should also just be putting pressure. As journalists, we should be asking every week, where is this new board? What is happening? Because we also have to scrutinize that board and make sure it's going to preserve the independence and the financial independence of the organization. So it's important. And we must push for this to happen and for this gap to be closed.
Prof, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. That's Wits University journalism professor, Professor Anton Harber.